Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Faire Life with Andrew McKee. Woo! Yes, it's testing a new portable setup right now, so yeah, so far I think we're okay. Sound seems to be going through, and the bare minimum. So that's going to be a process for the next few weeks, trying to get everything optimized and set up for the road, which will be my future. So yes, and hello everyone. Yeah, chat seems to be coming through. Always bonus. So yes, I see. Yeah, Kathy and Kim and Jan and Kurt and Dan and Alicia. Hey, nice to see you. Okay, seems good. That's always good to hear. So good. Yeah, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be a process trying to get everything going. Because I am packing everything I own and getting everything together and trying to figure out how to make this work on the road with as little trouble as possible. Yeah, so over the next few weeks, what I'm going to be doing is, well, trying a few things out. I'm going to try to change some of the codecs, which is the different different formats that video can be sent and audio, and trying to see how I can optimize that and go with a smaller bit rate so that I have a little more leeway on the road. Like here, I think the picture actually looks really crisp and clean and clear, and probably better than a lot of online live streams you see, because, well, I have a really good fiber setup here, and I can do that. And I've also optimized it a lot on top of that. So we're going to time to optimize it a little more and work on that. I'll be working on that, and we'll test it out. I didn't want to test it this week, though. I wanted to go with make sure everything was good, and so far it looks like it's good. So yeah, hey Tanya, great to see you. And glad Alicia is no, just giving a little bit of warning that this is what I'm going to be working on. It's part of the packing process, and I'm really glad that I've worked on this over the last couple of years. I mean, really, since this all started, it's been a process of trying to get the technology optimized as much as possible. Don't just go with the minimum, do the best you can do, and I'm proud of that approach because I think it works well. And well, hopefully you appreciate it and it works well for y'all too. But on the road, I want this to be as close to looking like this as I can. I want it to look as clean and crystal clear as possible while not causing any of you problems when you view it. So that's what I'm going to be working on. So just a little warning, there might be a few glitches here and there over the next couple of weeks, but I'm going to try to do some testing during the week before the show and try to make sure that doesn't happen. But yeah, I think we'll be okay. But I'm just throwing out that quality control warning. So, if it happens, hey, I warned you. That's kind of it. Hey, now, be nice. Yeah, I did want to go ahead and well, I guess let's go ahead and I tried to start a little early, and I'm going to keep trying to do that, where I start the kind of pre-show screen about a minute before 7 Central anyway, and then do the whole hourglass 15-minute bit about 15 seconds till, and then jump in right after 7 with my face so you can see me. So give you a little bit more. I think that's a better way to do it than how I have been. I've been kind of trying to just start it at 7, and I think going a little before I think it's going to be better for everybody. So yeah, what do you think? Does that work for y'all, or do you, I think most of y'all come in a little after that, and so you kind of come in around this time. So yeah, hopefully that works for you. Yeah, anyway, so let's jump in. I'll go ahead and do the obvious. Yeah, Alicia, just go ahead and did that. I was just about to do it myself, so you beat me to it. Go ahead and do the like and subscribe. I'm sure all of you already have, but hey, if you haven't, go ahead, do what you can. Always appreciated. But yeah, I did want to mention something because over the last several shows, we've talked a lot about the Texas Renaissance Festival and that HBO special, and I'm not going to mention it again, okay? So don't worry. This is not what that's about. I'm just saying that we've talked about it a lot, and I'd like to talk about TRF in a way that has nothing to do with that at all. Because I happened to hear some interesting news, and that's that if you've ever done the Texas Renaissance Festival or Scarborough a long time ago, you might be familiar with Merlin the Magician. He started, this Bill Palmer is his name, and he started performing out there the first year Texas Renaissance Fair started in the 70s and went through for 26 straight years, with his final year being in 2000. So, yeah, he retired after that, and he was doing Scarborough as well and other events at the same time. But, yeah, I mean, he kind of started with that fair, and anybody who who did TRF back in the day remembers Merlin at least. So it's the 50th season of TRF this year, and he's coming back to perform, sort of a reunion year. And even his former assistant is coming back to join him on stage. So really crazy that that's happening because let's be honest, it's been 24 years. So quite impressive. And if any of you are interested in that, something to check out. Oh, hey, Harvey. Yeah, I know, Kurt, right? Wow, that's kind of cool. I mean, somebody doing that out of retirement, and I think it's kind of cool. I honestly, I remember Merlin from the first fair I ever did, the Texas Renaissance Festival, back when I was a kid. This would have been around 1990. And I saw his show, but I mean, I was mostly looking at music shows and doing that. And there was always so much to do at Texas Renaissance Festival. You couldn't see everything. So I really only saw his show the one time back then. And then I saw a lot of music after that. But then when I started performing there in 99, that's when I saw him again. But it was really, yeah, always very, very well thought of. I've never heard a negative thing about him. The show was always very good for a magic show, and he definitely influenced a lot of people on the circuit over the years. So I know I'm with you on that. It really was a while. So yeah, for any of those interested in, I mean, there's certainly some negatives about the Texas Renaissance Festival now that might cause you to not want to go, but this is a positive. So something that might make you want to check it out this year. Kind of cool. And at the same time, I have to interject with a bit of sad news that some of you may not be familiar with, because speaking of the Texas Renaissance Festival, if you've ever seen a group out there, especially during the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, a group called the Flaming Idiots, amazing comedy juggling show. I remember seeing them, and to say that every juggler on the circuit was influenced heavily by them in some way, at least indirectly, is an understatement. They were really good. Well, they retired, years ago, but one of their members, John O'Connor, Pyro, unfortunately passed away the other day. So, he was dealing with cancer, and so a little sad note there. I hate to throw that out, but just one of those that one happy thing about a great from Texas Renaissance Festival, and one sad note from a great from the Texas Renaissance Festival. But that's what change is all about, unfortunately. So, yeah, I know that me doing music, I know I concentrate on that a bit. You're right. And that is a very good point, Alicia. Every fair has their legends, and these are two of them right there. Definitely. There's not really another way to put that. Yeah, definitely. Now, of course, I'm still packing like crazy, trying to get everything together that I can for the road. And living out of a car for a year is kind of what I'm looking at. I mean, I'm putting a lot of stuff in storage, sure, but so it's not like I'm throwing away everything. But yeah, I've got to have most of what I need for a car. I mean, in my car. And I'm not doing a trailer or an RV or any of that. And it takes a special kind of madness to really attempt this. Luckily, I think I'm in a position where I can make it happen better than most everybody else because, well, I mean, there's only one of me, so solo artist, and I'm single, and I don't have any pets, and yeah, I mean, it's just I'm also don't camp, and there's a lot of good things that make it where I don't need as much. I mean, I'm not going to need the portable stove and the tent and all that. It's really kind of like going on vacation, but just being able to keep in mind, well, you've got to do laundry now and then and do a few things on that vacation. So you got to keep it going. And that's really it. So I don't know. This is going to be an interesting experiment, and I'm going to keep you updated over the next year and a half on how that goes, because it's definitely not going to be boring. Definitely not. Definitely not. Well, it's not insanely small. I mean, it's a Toyota Camry. It has a good sized trunk. I'll give it that. But you're right. It's not huge. Right, right, and I think that's the good point, Harvey. I mean, if you travel light, and that's what I'm going to have to do, and I'm kind of going through this in stages. Like I'm saying, okay, here's the things I absolutely need. What would I like? And then I go through that again and say, okay, how can I pare this down? How can I minimize this? Here's stuff I think I might need. Okay, if I don't need it, it's a waste. Is it something I can get on the road if I absolutely need it? Is it worth just ordering from Amazon or stopping at a shop and getting one of these if I absolutely need it? And the odds of that being low, it's not expensive, why would I bring it? Kind of thing like that. I mean, that's how I'm kind of looking at it. And I'm making lots of lists. For those of you who put lists together, you will really appreciate what I'm doing. I mean, lists to the left of me, lists to the right of me. It is very much about the lists. Very much so. And and Alicia is throwing that out. Yes. In fact, I told you before that Alicia provided the 7 reasons. And I was going to do it last weekend, but since the show got canceled for last week, because my computer was in pieces, let's go ahead and jump into that. I think that's fair. Let's go ahead and just do that real quick. Here we go. We can do that. 7 reasons. So Alicia provided 7 reasons being on the road sucks, but I still wouldn't trade it for anything. That's a quote. So I'm going to quote a lot of Alicia right here, but here you go. So we're going to start with number 7. So the 7th reason being on the road sucks. Kansas and Ohio and Pennsylvania. That's right. Some states have things to write home about, and I'm quoting Alicia here. Some states consider billboards to be landmarks. While there's redeemable things about most states, these 3 are especially boring on the interstate. Except Kansas, it's just boring everywhere. I get that. I mean, I will say that Ohio and Pennsylvania, in my experience, they have some lovely areas of those states. Quite lovely, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I mean, the highways are not really one of them. They're not very picturesque on the road. I can't argue that. Now, that being said, I totally get it. I mean, it's kind of like, why would you spoil these wonderful views and these wonderful locations with an interstate? I mean, come on. So, yeah, I think if you're going to do that, hey, that's not a bad way to do it. But you're right. Driving through them is, let's just say audiobooks are your friend. And distractions, very good. So yeah, it is rough. Kansas is an interesting animal in itself. You're right. It's very flat. Going east to west, it's just, this is how I approach it. Whichever way I go, I just drive and it looks the exact same no matter where I am in Kansas on this interstate. And what is it, 70 or yeah? But anyway, I'm driving through and I just drive until I get to the megachurch. Now, those of you who've driven this know what I'm talking about. About halfway through Kansas, you hit this ridiculous, like 10-story cross. And and it's in the middle of nowhere, like just fields of crops everywhere. And then there's this huge parking lot that looks like it's a massive mall in a major city, with this huge building structure. And it is a megachurch. And I guess it just, it supplies the whole 30 to 50 mile radius area. And I'm sure on Sundays it is packed, but it's generally on weekdays, it's just empty. So it looks really weird and out of place. It's very strange. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. I totally get that, Alicia. Yeah, it's just weird. I mean, the whole megachurch thing. I don't know. I don't think it's a good look. The way they have it, it looks a little too cultish, for my taste. So it's a little weird. Just to kind of out in the middle of nowhere, a little too in the cornfield kind of thing. If yeah, so a little too children of the corn. So I don't know, but it just sprouts up in the middle of nowhere. But otherwise, there's nothing. I mean, end to end of Kansas, there's like nothing except this one mega church in the middle. It is really weird. But I can't argue with her. I can't argue with her points there. That's true. Number 6, signal issues. And she says that you never know where the dead spots will be until your playlist suddenly stops. Even worse, when the place you're staying is a hopeless dead zone. Thank goodness for Wi-Fi sometimes. Totally right. And I get that. I mean, back when I was just going on the road, initially, back with my old bandmate Mark Gunn with the Brobdingnagian Bards, we'd see other performers and they'd have these huge binders filled with DVDs. And then they'd have they'd play them on their laptop or have a DVD player, a small portable one, they'd plug into the TVs in the hotels or whatever, just so they could have entertainment on the road when they're going places. But I mean, huge binders filled with DVDs, all these movies. And I started doing that initially for the road to try to do that. But around 2005, they started coming out with these, the first portable media players, digital media players with a hard drive and it's like an external hard drive that had a little more to it, and you could plug a HDMI cable in it and plug it into your TV. And that's what I did. I got one of those and started digitizing my entire movie collection. And it's been progressing since then, because you're right. Sometimes you don't have signal. And, Netflix came out a few years after that, but with streaming, like in, was it 2007, I think? But it was really, yeah, I mean, by then, that was great when you were at home, but on the road, it just didn't make much sense. Now, things are a lot better now than they've ever been, but it still can be a headache. So, I mean, I have a 18 terabyte hard drive that I have all of my movies and TV shows on right now, and I bring that with me. That's how I do it. But no, I mean, luckily I have a good cell phone with a hotspot capability, with the unlimited data plan, and it can get me through the tough parts. But if you're on the road and there's no signal where you are, which does still happen, not as much as it did, but it still happens. It is a huge headache. It is very rough. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. And she's specifically talking about Sterling. Yeah, I have heard some issues there, and some fairs are worse than others. I've been very lucky. Most of the fairs I've been to have been pretty good, but I have been to a few where there have been issues at different times in history. And sometimes, it'll be bad for a few years, and a lot of people will complain, and they'll build a new tower, and then it'll be fixed. But we'll see. I will say it's better now than it ever has been. And so I assume it's just going to keep getting better. So, yeah. Number 5, administrative BS. Everything from mail to doctor's appointments become that much more difficult, especially when you live in a state that makes absentee voting a chore. You're not wrong, and that is one of the conversations. I've talked to a lot of people, other performers, about this going on the road, and yeah, you really have to plan ahead and make this work. And for some states, it's not easy. In Texas, at least, absentee voting seems okay in my experience, but I haven't really tried it out, so we'll see. We shall see. But yeah, that will be something I'm going to have to endure. You are not wrong. Um, oh, Jan, yeah, those drives with just a radio. Oh man, yeah. That's it could be. It could be. I mean, when they had cassette tapes and everything in cars, that was when the world changed and everything was like we can have that. And you remember audiobooks on cassette tapes? They'd have these huge packs of one audiobook all on cassette, and it'd be like 20 hours of cassettes, which was just like ridiculously huge. And you'd just be flipping tapes throughout the whole trip. That was interesting. So yeah, I get you. I get you. Texas is certainly a little chaotic in so many things. You're not wrong. I'm hoping that it'll be okay, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Number 4, limited space. According to Alicia, you have to have everything you need with you, and that always presents a challenge, especially if you have a tent camp, leave space for traveling with an animal, or like to have crafty projects on hand. Double the effort if you're going to experience different climates before you get back to storage. So yeah, that is true. And like I said before, I'm not going to camp, so no tent. I don't have a pet, and I've already found a home for my plants, so we're good there. Yeah, so thought ahead there. And crafty projects, most of the projects I work on, believe it or not, are virtual. They're on my laptop. So there are some that aren't, but yeah, I'm going to have to pick and choose. I think what I'm going to end up doing is putting a lot of those in my my storage unit, and then when I'm in town in the area for Sherwood, or hope maybe for some other Texas fairs at different times in the year, trying to go to the storage unit and get some of those while I'm staying in one space for several months or several weeks at least, and I can work on them and finish them and then put them back and do that. That's kind of my plan. We'll see how well that works. So maybe we'll be coming back to this list, and I'll let you know how naive I was. Yeah. Right. And that's tough. I mean, I know people that have a lot of that kind of thing, where the equipment is real challenge. Yeah, that's not easy. So I have a lot of respect for you on that. And you almost need to have like a trailer behind you to that you're pulling along, at least something to store all that stuff. I think I'm going to have a little bit of extra room, and it's going to be very much like I've got room for this amount of stuff that I can bring extra bonus. I've got like, okay, this is all the stuff I have to have. I've got this much stuff of extra. What am I picking? And it's going to be like I'm on, like I'm going to the International Space Station. I've got this weight allowance, and that's it. It's going to be wild. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Number 3. Okay. Packing entropy. And Alicia says, no matter how thoughtfully you pack, you're going to need something at the bottom of the stack of stuff, or you'll get annoyed and put something back halfway and screw yourself over. Tetris never lasts. Totally get that. And I kind of tested this out a little bit just on the road before when I was going to North Dakota and to New Jersey. I didn't know how I was testing this, but not for this, but not for full time, but I was testing it just to go on the road a bit, and came up with a system that I think will work for me. How I do it is because I don't camp. I don't have to leave stuff in my car, especially if I'm going to be somewhere for several weeks. So when I get there, I unpack the stuff I have to have, like my clothes and my instruments, and I take a couple of trips to unpack that from my car. And then, that night I'll go out and get something to eat or something. And when I come back, I'll do another load and bring stuff in from that. So I don't have to unpack like a ton of stuff all at once. I can just do it as I'm traveling or walking to where I'm staying anyway. And over a couple of trips, several trips sometimes, I unpack everything. So I get everything in where I'm staying for several weeks, and it's all available. That's kind of the plan. It might not be everything, but what that will allow me to do is have everything within reach, and it will be easy to get to. It's a little extra work, but if I spread it out, I don't think it will seem that bad. And then when I leave, I do the same thing in reverse. A couple of days early, going out to get something to eat or running an errand or whatever, I think, okay, what do I not need before I leave? And that's the stuff I take out to the car on that trip, and I keep doing that. And there might be a lot of stuff I'll need to keep before I leave, and I might have to make multiple trips, but I can at least minimize that. So that's my plan there. We'll see. Yeah, you're not wrong. Dungeons & Dragons really helps with that. Yeah, it really does. Yeah, maybe I'm naive. I mean, it's one of those things where I think the question is, how close was I to life on the road with my trip to North Dakota and New Jersey? Because that was a month and a half. And honestly, I don't really need to bring much more. And I didn't even pack that economically. I mean, I had extra room, and I could have certainly, I could have packed better. So we're going to see. I mean, this is going to be a fun experiment, but luckily we'll see. Right. Pre-packing is the important thing. You don't want to rush in last minute. Yeah, I do have some really good. I bought a few extra new bags to try to organize things better, and we'll see how that's going to work. Definitely pushing the organization, and it'll be an experiment. We'll see. Definitely. Okay, number two, shifting schedules. Okay. She says, it's really not fair when you fall in love with an area or a festival and then you don't get to go back the next year. There's always that chance, though, and so you have to try to prioritize what you want to do in an area because there's never enough time to do it all. You're not wrong. And that's certainly, you want to stop and smell the flowers when you go somewhere or you travel somewhere. And you want to make it as much like a vacation as you can, because if you don't, why are you doing it? You got to have as much, it has to be a fun experience. If it's stressful work that you're not enjoying, you might as well do that at a desk job and get paid more. That's really the gist. So yeah, I mean, you need to do that, but you're right. It can be heartbreaking. I found there are two strategies that Faire owners and entertainment directors tend to employ. There's the devil approach that, there's more pros than cons on their list of good and bad for this performer. And, I could switch them out and try to get a new one, but I know them, they're going to do a good job. And yeah, I'm going to stick with them because better the devil I know kind of thing. Not worth the risk. And they might switch out a few groups here and there, but especially if there's some controversy or problems with them. But for having reliable performers that offer good bang for the buck is very invaluable to entertainment directors. So generally you get hired back, but getting your foot in the door can be a challenge. So once you get somewhere, you can stay there for a while. Now, the flip side is other entertainment directors will look at it and say, I want to switch out groups every few years, or the patrons are going to get bored and they're not going to come back because it's like, oh, it's the same old thing that we saw before. And there's some truth there. I get it. But at the same time, I think you're dealing with two ways of thinking about it from not only entertainment directors, but from patrons, because there are patrons that always want new stuff. And there are patrons that really feel more comfortable with stuff they know. Like, I've always been shocked by groups that will come back and see the same show year after year from the same group, and it doesn't change at all. I think a good example of this is probably Dead Bob, that comedy show where it's the same jokes. I mean, I remember being at the Texas Renaissance Festival and performing there, and all the performers could quote the show from memory because we'd seen it year after year after year. And just being backstage and hearing it, we could put it together. It was the same thing. And hundreds of people would come and see every show. It was ridiculous. It always confused us, but people like that repetition. They like knowing what the joke's going to be and being able to be in on it. So, but there are other people that want new stuff. So, I mean, you're really not going to please everybody. I think a hybrid is the best, in my opinion. Changing a few people out here or there, but not completely changing everything. Having some stable, consistent groups as well, because people aren't the same. But that's my opinion. Oh, right. Yeah, there is that. Oh, right, right, right. There is that as well. I mean, luckily, I use an app called Gas Buddy, which usually tends to give me some insight on inexpensive gas where I am. But there are other apps and things that do as well. So yeah, it's there are some options, definitely. I mean, because you think about one trip as being, well, what's a few cents here, a few cents there, it doesn't matter. But when you add all that up throughout the year, it adds up, especially if you're doing this full time. So you want to min max a little bit, going back to D&D. Right, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, I think we all do it on some things, but I think a lot of us are kind of either or. I mean, some things we want that comfort food we're used to, but sometimes we want something different, and it's a weird dichotomy with people and their personalities. But I think there are some people that always want something different, and some people that always want the same. So you can't really please everybody. So that's why I think a mix is probably the best way. It's really weird. Okay, so the number one reason being on the road sucks is inconvenient food cravings. So Alicia says, but worst of all is when you fall in love with food that you can only get in specific places, and then you get cravings when you can't have it. Cape Cod, fresh seafood when you're in the Midwest, venison from that one place in Oklahoma when you're in New York, the coffee from that coffee house in the Hudson Valley when you're on your way to Texas. It's torture. I get that. I have a lot of friends who are very much like that. I'm not. So I think that gives me a kind of an advantage here. Food has always been more of an annoyance, honestly. When I was growing up, I'd always say, I wish I could go solar, because I'm in the middle of a project and I have to eat and stop in order to, recharge. And it was always annoying more than, oh, I get to eat. I was very rarely felt that way. So, I mean, certainly there are foods I like more than others, but I've never been obsessive about food. And a lot of people do seem to be. And that certainly makes being on the road harder. But yeah, that's not as much a problem for me. I try to find those experiences, those fun places. Like in North Dakota, there was this kind of breakfast place that it was all for the locals. I mean, it wasn't a touristy place. It's called the Shack on Broadway in Fargo, North Dakota. And it's all just locals going and eating. And it's a fun little place, and with great accents. Don't you know? I mean, it's really hilarious to go in there and listen to people talk, but also just they have good food, and it's not very expensive. It's reasonably priced. It's not priced for tourists. So I like that. I try to find those places wherever I go. I remember the first time going into Destin, Florida, back with my old bandmate Mark Gunn, and we were thinking, we're in Destin, we should get seafood. And of course, on the main highway there, lots of chain seafood places. And we didn't want that, so we just stopped off at a fish shop, a place that just sold fish and other seafood for you to take home and cook. And we went in, and just nobody was there, so we weren't really hurting anything, but we just talked to the two ladies working there and said, listen, we want to get seafood to at a restaurant, but we don't want a touristy place. So if you were going to get seafood right now that wasn't too expensive but tasted really good, where would you go? And they both looked at each other and said, oh, Dewey Destin. And I'm like, okay, how do we get there? And it was hilarious, because they said, okay, you take a left on the highway. Right before you get to the bridge over the water, you take a right. and you're going into this area with houses. You go down about 15 houses and you'll see this kind of old sign on the left that says Dewey Destin with an arrow pointing left. Right after the sign, you take a left on this dirt road. You'll go in between these two houses and go past that. And then you'll get to this field with a bunch of cars parked. Just park among those cars, go past the cars, and you'll see this shack. Go around the shack to the other side, and that's Dewey Destin. And those are the actual instructions, by the way, in case anybody wants to go there. But yeah, that was the back. I mean, was like the back of a place. It doesn't look good, but the other side was new wood. I mean, it was a nice place, and they had docks where you could bring your boat up on the water, and it was kind of like a Sonic with for seafood. It was really weird, but all fresh catch stuff, and it was delicious. So yeah, I always try to go there whenever I can. So I'm sure you all have those types of places too. Yeah. Oh man, that's a lot. Wow, that's a lot of time. Okay, so for you, it's about the coffee, Lisa. Okay, that's fair. Ice cream sandwiches. Okay, that's an interesting obsession. I'll give you that. Yeah, generally it is better, Harvey. And I think it's just nice to support local if you can. So I try to do that. I mean, that's generally a good plan. Um, so yeah, but I'll try to go to the local grocery stores, kind of thing, if I can, and do that when I'm around. So that's kind of a what was the one in North Dakota? Hornbachers, I think is what it was called. Yeah. So I try to do that. Oh, okay. I know, right? I try. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's Sonic for seafood. It's weird. Anyway, yeah. So those are the 7 reasons being on the road sucks, but still wouldn't trade it for anything. Written by Alacia. So good job, Alacia. Good job. Good job. Good job. Yeah, I agree with all of those. I've kept all of them in mind, and I'm trying to work on it so that those affect me as little as possible. Yeah, I know. Once again, I know I might be naive, but I'm going to try my best and see. It's either going to be something that I'm doing great at, and I'm just making this work, or I'm miserable. So we will see. And I figure either way, I can do it for a year, and after that, if I need to stop and back off a little bit and find a place to live and decompress, I can do that. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting test. Oh right, yeah, Lee's, yeah, yeah, Lee's Drive-In and is that is a good kind of diner, kind of burger joint kind of place, classic. And for you, it's Valkyrie Coffee in Chester, New York, and Rotisserie in Kansas City. Okay, yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, actually, that's something I should probably do. Start making a list of the cool places to eat and to shop and everything around the country. Um, it's not a actually, yeah. Um, that should be a Rennie group for sure. Hmm. I'll see about that. That's not a bad thought because there are. I'm sure there are groups that do kind of the similar thing, but um, when you're the whole Rennie on the road, you want a little different sometimes. There's a different mentality about it, I think, um, than just finding what you need. I mean, sometimes you want cheap. Sometimes you're broke and you need to find a cheap place to eat. So it happens. Anyway, let's jump into the Faire map because we're already getting later than I expected. I didn't expect that to take that long, but I never do. So let's jump in. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this will work. Again, testing things a little here. Woohoo! Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, yep, yep. Okay. Now it's cat friendly. Okay. So yes, starting off, we have the main Renaissance Fair coming up this weekend. This is the first out of 2 weekends in Acton, Maine. So yeah, that nice northern spot. You can see a lot of these are going to be more northern for the summer, and rightly so because it's way too hot down south for the most part. Although we had a bit of it was a bit cooler today in Austin, thank goodness. But still, generally speaking, better up north. Jumping over to New York, we have the Sterling Renaissance Festival is about halfway through, and Sterling, New York, it is the fourth weekend out of 7, and the theme is Pirate Invasion Weekend. Not surprising, they love their pirates. A lot of pirate festivals in New York, I've mentioned that before, so I imagine this is going to be a pretty busy weekend there at Sterling. Going down to the Great Lakes Medieval Fair and Marketplace in Rock Creek, Ohio. This is over halfway through. It's the fourth weekend out of 6. There you go. And its theme is pirates, princesses, and pups. So they're kind of going the pirate theme as well. Jumping over to Michigan, we have the Mid-Michigan Enchanted Forest Fair. This is in Vassar, Michigan, and this is the last weekend, the third weekend out of 3. And the theme is High Seas Hijinks. So again, some more of a pirate theme. Definitely a trend. They do love their pirates up there. Going down to Indiana, we have the Newcastle Henry County Renaissance Festival. Now, this is an interesting one. It's only one day in Newcastle, Indiana, just a Saturday, July 27th. And it's more like a kind of a county fair event that is themed Renaissance Fair, but it's been going on for several years, so it's at least passed the test of longevity, so I include it. Definitely, for one day, you're going to get only local performers, but, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. It can be, some smaller festivals can be quite charming, so hopefully that one is like that. Jumping over to Wisconsin and Kenosha, we have the Bristol Renaissance Fair, and it's still just getting going. It's the fourth weekend out of 9, and the theme is Cottagecore Weekend. Cottagecore. How many of you know what cottagecore is? Because I was not familiar with that term, so I had to look it up. And it is an internet aesthetic idealizing rural life. So think the Hallmark Channel. I mean, it's very much rural is good, urban bad kind of approach, where the simple life and approaching things that way is the way to go. It's an interesting theme. Very, very Gen Z. I don't know. I mean, the whole going back to a rural life is certainly not a new theme. It happens every 50 years or so, whether it's the 1960s or the artistic movement in the 1800s or whatever. I mean, it crops up every once in a while. So not that new, but this is certainly a new version. It's kind of interesting. So then jumping over to Renin the Glen and Downing, Wisconsin. And this is just one weekend. Normally, having a big fair like Bristol and having another fair in the same state, I mean, it used to be that was taboo back in the day. But now you see it more. And of course, Wisconsin is not a small state, and you can see how far away they are. So I totally get it. And Renin the Glen has been going on since, oh gosh, it's been over 10 years. I want to say 2012, but it's something like that. So yeah, obviously they're doing something right, but that makes sense. Definitely interesting. Then jumping over to the Colorado Renaissance Festival in Larkspur, Colorado. Now this is getting in the tail end. This is the 7th weekend out of 8, and the theme is Renaissance, Romance, and Masquerade Weekend. So yeah, something to check out there. Then jumping over to Wyoming. Now we don't normally hear from Wyoming because they don't normally have fairs in Wyoming. But this is a one-day event in Sheridan, Wyoming, and it's the Tournament of Nights. And what they do is it's mainly focused on a day of night events, and it's mostly about the nights, but they have some booths and some other performers kind of complementing that. But it's mainly about the joust, and it's an interesting kind of thing. And I might sometimes I might discount something like this as being a little too narrow in focus, but it's kind of close enough, and Wyoming doesn't have much else Ren Fair wise, so got to give them something. So it is kind of interesting. So yeah, that is kind of interesting. Then we go over to Silverton, Oregon, for the Canterbury Renaissance Fair. This is the second out of 2 weekends, so the last weekend. And then jumping up to the Washington Midsummer Renaissance Fair in Snohomish, Washington. God, it doesn't even sound like it's spelled. But anyway, this is the second out of 5 weekends, so it's just kind of getting going. And the theme, again, is Pirates Plunder a High Seas Adventure. Everybody loves the pirates this weekend. So, yep, there you go. Not too bad. Woohoo! Yeah. So cottagecore is emphasizing the fair artisans. Oh, I brought that back, sorry. Yeah, so that makes sense. Interesting. So that's never a bad thing. I think the artistic side of it. Too many fairs tend to approach it as just a resale flea market type of thing, and not all do. Don't get me wrong, and certainly not most necessarily, but definitely a higher percentage than I'd like. Kind of just treat it like resale shops, and I'd much prefer to be a lot of the merchants, if not all of them, make their own stuff, or at least most of their own stuff. So it's kind of a big deal for some of us. So I'm glad they have that emphasis. So yeah, definitely. Oh, I also want to go ahead and thank Katsurita for helping me with this list since last November. They kind of put together a Google Doc with they just took care of it all in like a month, just did it all for the next year, and put it together, and it was a good starting point. I still had to go through and take off a few things, and since it was done months ago, sometimes there were some things missing, so I had to fix it. But it was nice to have that that basis to go with, because sometimes I'm in a rush, and just having something so I don't have to start from scratch was so handy. So yeah, thanks a lot to Katsurita for helping during this time and helping out. So really appreciate that. Other than that, I think that's about all we have time for. It's already, wow. Well, that was when Alicia was not feeling very well. So yeah, that's you're generally better now. But yeah, I've just been kind of working with this, and I think it ends at the end of this month. So now I've got to start doing it myself again with Alicia's help, I'm sure. But yeah, just credit where credit is due. Woo. But definitely a bonus and a lot of help. And yeah, so anyway, let's go ahead and end it there. And I'm going to get back to packing and putting stuff together and, throwing out most of my life, because it is definitely a change. And, whew, it's going to be an interesting year, to say the least. But I will say it's both scary and exciting. And what's more bardic than that? So why not? And hey, bye, Tanya. Thanks for joining. And thanks, Harvey. I always appreciate that. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and end it there. And I should be back next week. And we'll have I'll be heading out right afterwards to go to Gen Con, but in Indianapolis. But I should still be here on Monday, and probably testing out a few new things to see if we can streamline this process and make it even a little more efficient, so that I can do more shows on the road and stress about it less. Always a good thing. Take care. Have a wondrous week, And as always, a fair life. Take care. Bye.